Should you start getting ready for an action packed storytelling experience where you and your friends take on the roles of superheroes in your own corner of the Invincible universe, or essentially any superhero setting of your choosing? Well, you'll find out because I'll be sharing my review of the Invincible superhero role playing starter set from Free League Publishing and Skybound Entertainment right after this. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Today, I'll be sharing my review of the Invincible superhero role-playing starter set from Free League Publishing and Skybound Entertainment. This box set is arriving in stores on July 30th. It will carry an MSRP of $29.99. Having said that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the starter set for Invincible superhero role-playing. Few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends over at Free League Publishing were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's very important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the two booklets which are contained within, but I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside this starter set. And then, of course, there is an introductory adventure contained in this starter set. So if you're a player and your game master has pre-ordered the starter set, maybe they're talking about picking this up, keep in mind there are some spoilers ahead. Not major spoilers, but there will be some spoilers. So I'm just letting you know that right up front. Of course, if your GM has been kicking around picking this starter set up, let them know about this review, and that way they can approach this and make a far more informed buying decision. All right, so I am going to save the two booklets for last. So we're going to talk about all the other items that are packed inside this starter set. And we're going to start off with the cut dice. Very nicely done. Kind of get the color scheme of Invincible, the yellow and blue. Our 6 shows the Invincible symbol. And then, of course, we've got that on our 1. Now, Invincible superhero role-playing utilizes the Year Zero engine with a few very minor tweaks. So what you're looking at is a dice pool. And when you're attempting to achieve something, you're going to roll your dice pool, your applicable dice pool, and you're looking to roll 6s. So, of course, the more dice that you have, the better chance you have of succeeding, or maybe really doing something very, very well if you get additional successes. So you've got all of those dice. Very nice. We got 10 of them all in all, and they are cut. So these will hold up very well. There's no silk screen or stickers or anything like that. Nice, cool cut dice. We also have some plastic stands because we've got standees. We have an initiative deck. So it's 1 through 10. Once again, as I mentioned, this utilizes the Year Zero engine. So we do have initiative cards that get dealt out. There are different ways for you to change your ranking in initiative during a combat round as well. Of course, the rules tackle that in far more detail. But nice card stock. And these have a linen finish as well. So well done on those. Then each of our pre-generated characters will receive a couple of cards with some role-playing prompts. This is something we see with some Free League publishing adventures for the various different IPs that they've got. Normally, when we have a boxed adventure, prime example is Alien, the role-playing game. With those boxed adventures, we always get pre-generated characters, and then we will normally have a handful of cards for each of the pre-gens with role-playing prompts for each act, maybe objectives for each act. Here, these are role-playing prompts for the characters. I thought that was very cool. Now, of course, Invincible Superhero Role-Playing is a scene-based game. So you are going to go from briefings to social scenes, action scenes, debriefs. So you're not going to spend a lot of time with mundane activities. And I love that because it's a superhero role-playing game. You shouldn't have to sit there and role play out the really slow parts of the story. Something else we get, 5 reference cards. And these are nice card stock here too. These are really well done. You give those to a player, they're going to have a really good idea of exactly how this game plays. Now, of course, this is a starter set. It's not going to provide you with all the rules. So as an example, most starter sets do not include character creation rules. That is the case here as well. That's all in the core rule book. But this is not a starter set that references a lot of things in the core rule book, and then you have absolutely no clue about them because nothing's included in the starter set. So I definitely dig that. But really nice reference cards here. We get some nice thick standees. We got a couple of punch boards here. We've got the pre-generated characters, NPCs, adversaries, and so forth. Nice extra touch, front and back. So that is the back of the character. It's not simply dual-sided with the same image. Definitely like that a lot. Then we've got some informational tokens. We've got some bystanders here as well. The third act of the adventure involves one of the objectives being saving as many bystanders as you possibly can. So we've got those there too, and dual-sided. So if you flip over the bystander, that means they've been killed. The group of bystanders, I should say. There we go. Then we have a dual-sided mat. It's just paper, but it has been treated, so this should hold up fairly nicely. Good size as well. This is Act 3, the big showdown, big battle that's going to take place across the city. Give you an idea there. And then for the other 2 acts, so this is really nice. Then we'll get into our pre-generated characters. So I'll tell you what, let's take a look at Adam Eve. So we're going to get the front here. It's going to give us information about the character, their powers. Now, something I do want to mention as far as Invincible Superhero Role-Playing, this is not a role-playing game that gets really crunchy and in the weeds as far as the powers. So the powers are more abstracted than you would see in some other superhero role-playing games. Personally, I'm fine with that. Some people out there might not be. So I'll give you an example. So one of Adam Eve's major powers is transformation. She can transform non-living matter into something else, which is made up of non-living matter. That's the information right there about that power. Other superhero role-playing games would probably have a couple of pages devoted to that. Now, as far as the character sheet, we are going to show our various different attributes. Here we've got fighting, agility, strength, reason, intuition, and presence. So you'll see these numbers here. Those are the dice pools. So if Adam Eve is doing something that's fighting related. So this is melee combat. That character gets 3 dice. If it's something that involves intuition, she would get 4 dice. If it's present, 6, and so forth. We also have health and we have resolve. So as far as our characters, both player characters and NPCs, their health scores are not going to be massive. We're not looking at 50 hit points. So I don't want to say that your characters are squishy by any stretch, but you're not looking at having huge, massive totals of hit points for the most part. Resolve is actually used to push dice rolls. So stress deducts from your resolve. Stress can also be used to activate certain powers. So health does not get regained until the action scene is over. You do have an opportunity to regain resolve during an action scene. So more information about the powers, critical injuries. Yeah, there are actually critical injuries in this. Personal stuff, talents and drawbacks. Adam Eve does not have drawbacks. She does have talents. So as I mentioned, we've got the various pre-generated characters. So now let's start getting into the booklets. So of course, when you first open the box, you have a read me first and top backers for the Kickstarter because Invincible Superhero Role-Playing was crowdfunded. So we've got our rules, and then we've got Metro Mayhem. That is our intro adventure. So let's dive on into this real quick. Should point out, cardstock on the cover, front and back. Really nice. Really nice. And then the paper stock is excellent, especially for a starter set. Usually starter sets, they'll kind of skimp a little bit on the paper stock. That is not the case here. First thing we're going to do, let's take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life. So let's give credit where credit is due. So we're going to get an introduction to the world of Invincible. Not a ton of information here. More of that is, of course, in the core book. If you are not up to date with the Invincible universe up to a certain point, there are going to be loads and loads of spoilers. So if you're a game master and maybe you've read the first, 1 or 2 graphic novels of Invincible, maybe you've been watching the animated series and you're like, oh man, I gotta check this out. There are spoilers ahead. So just so you know, I don't want to dissuade anybody from picking this up because they haven't read everything for Invincible. But do keep in mind, you'll be introduced to NPCs and stuff that you're like, especially in the core book, not necessarily in the starter set. So it's going to give us all our information about our rules here. As I had pointed out before, this is built on the Year Zero engine. You got a dice pool. You're rolling those 6-sided dice. You're looking to roll 6s. And you can push dice rolls if you initiated the action. So I'll give you an example. In combat, you can block a physical attack. You can try to dodge a ranged attack. You can't push those dice rolls because those are reactionary dice rolls. Now, if you're sitting there trying to decipher some computer program in order to prevent a nuclear missile launch and you fail, that is something you could push because it's something that you are initiating. So just want to let you know. Honestly, the Year Zero engine is pretty easy to wrap your head around. This has a little bit of crunch, of course, mostly with the combat. But overall, you're looking at, it's a dice pool. You're rolling for successes. Now, in combat, You've got a couple of actions that you can utilize in your combat round. Now, of course, once again, we've got the initiative, so it goes in initiative order, and you can perform one quick action and a full action, or two quick actions. So something to keep in mind. And of course, you can hold your actions. You can trade initiative cards with other players as well as NPCs to move later in the round so you can react to what's going on. And then, of course, you can also trade initiative cards to get somebody up in the order who you want to be taking their action before your character does. So there's a little strategy going on with the initiative too, which I like. That's something we've also seen in other Free League publishing games. But it's important for players to keep in mind that dodging a ranged attack or blocking a melee attack, in this case, it's called a slugfest, it requires a quick action. If you have already taken your actions, then you cannot dodge or block. Now, it is possible that some attacker earlier in the round, let's say they shoot a beam at your character and you dodge it, when it comes around to your turn, you still would have a full action or a quick action for you to utilize. So there is some tracking of that takes place. So just keep in mind, you can either do a full action and a quick action or two quick actions in your combat round. And movement is a quick action. Something also important to keep in mind too. So in combat, if you're blocking or dodging, then it is going to be an opposed roll. So as an example, let's say the big bad is trying to pound you into the ground. Well, they're going to roll on fighting. You're going to roll on fighting. And then whoever has the most successes is going to win that round of combat. And a defender who is blocking a slugfest attack, if they have more successes, that's their counterattack. So there are different ways for you to damage your opponent. So normally what you're looking at is your character will have a slugfest damage rating. So as an example, Adam Eve was 2. So if Adam Eve lands a successful melee attack, it would be 2 points of damage. Now, of course, there's armor that can soak that up. There are powers that can soak that. And when you run out of damage points, you've pretty much been beaten to a pulp for the most part. Of course, dying as a superhero is a lot different, right? So it's not as if you've got death saves and things like that. No. Also, we do have the resolve. So as I mentioned before, you can spend stress, which actually is your resolve, and you can do rerolls. Also, additional successes in combat. So activate special effects like knocking your target back is one example. There are critical hits, and the critical hits, if you roll high enough, that is an insta-kill. And it doesn't matter who you are. It is like your head's been smashed, whatever, right? Like I said, a little bit of crunch as far as the combat goes, but nothing too crazy. It is pretty abstract. Should also mention, when I was showing those maps, we have zones. So areas are broken up into zones. This is something we're seeing more and more of with role-playing games. So it isn't like, oh, well, your character gets to move 30 feet in a combat round if they're running or whatever. It's simply, okay, you can move so many zones. So something else, like I said, there's some abstraction here. But as far as the combat goes, you should have a lot of fun with various different combat scenes, action scenes, I should say. So you get 21 pages of rules in the little rule book here. And like I said, for the most part, covers all the bases. You can jump right in, start playing. And speaking of jumping right in and starting to play, we also have the introductory adventure. I want to say it's 40 pages. And I am going to, of course, skip some pages here. But we're going to start off with our briefing scene. So this adventure is taking place a couple of weeks or a few weeks after Invincible has been defeated by his father, Omni-Man, for the first time, and Omni-Man has left Earth. And of course, the Guardians of the Globe have all been murdered by Omni-Man. So now they're recruiting new members for the Guardians of the Globe. Now, we do have the pre-generated characters. Now, of course, if you also have the core rule book along with the starter set, you can create your own characters. You don't have to use the pre-gens. So this is broken up into 3 acts. And essentially what's going on is the big bad Machine Head is the leader of this huge criminal organization. He has these kaiju cloned so that they can go out and create destruction across urban landscapes. And then Machine Head owns these various different construction companies. So with the rebuilding, he's going to make huge amounts of money. I was like, wow, that's kind of channeling a little Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor. I thought that was kind of cool. So we do have the 3 acts, and the final act will be the big showdown with 4 different kaiju. They are a little bit smaller. They're not massive like Godzilla creatures yet because they're young. I also have to laugh because Machine Head refers to them as the little sluggers. But that was kind of cool too. All right. So a couple other things to mention with these different acts. We do have different events that could trigger. So if a player character does this, then this happens. If they don't do this, then this happens. So we've got that sprinkled throughout. I also love how we've got dialogue sprinkled throughout this as well for the NPCs. So if this happens, they say this. Because come on, it's a comic book superhero role-playing game. You got to have some catchphrases. You got to have some pithy comments to toss out there. So I definitely dug that. I thought that was very cool as well. So 36 pages is the length of the adventure, not 40, but still for a starter set adventure, pretty solid. I will mention if you're kind of just racing through the starter adventure here in a longer session, say 4 or 5 hours, you might wrap the whole thing up. So you might, as a game master, want to try to utilize some of the optional events taking place, maybe to stretch this out so you get a little more value out of the adventure. Because I will be honest, the adventure is very solid, should be a lot of fun. It is a little bit on the short side, just so you know. All right, so that is a look at the Invincible superhero role-playing starter set from Free League Publishing and Skybound Entertainment. Let's swing back over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. As far as the production quality of this starter set, it's excellent. You've already seen it's got the custom cut dice, the linen finish cards, the nice thick cardstock standees and the plastic stands, the treated battle map, as well as the really nice paper stock in the 2 booklets that are contained within. So production quality is excellent, especially when you keep in mind that this has an MSRP of $29.99. You're getting a lot packed into the box. But that won't matter if it isn't a very good game. I can say I like Invincible superhero role playing. Now, not everybody is. Now, first of all, I always dig Year Zero engine games. I like the mechanics. I like how it's rules light. I like how players don't have to take a lot of time to start wrapping their head around the core mechanics of the game. Now, granted, with Invincible superhero role playing, there have been some tweaks. There's some extra crunch as far as some aspects of the powers and combat, but still, this is a relatively rules light superhero role playing game. And some people out there are not going to like the fact that this is not highly tactical as far as combat goes, that the superpowers are relatively abstract and fairly broad. I know there are folks out there who want, pages of information about just one superpower. Well, that's not the sort of role playing game that Invincible superhero role playing is looking to be. I really get the impression that the main focus of the role playing game is to capture the feel of the Invincible comic as well as the animated series. And I think this starter set does a really nice job, especially with the starting adventure, obviously enough. Speaking of the adventure, I am hoping that we do see some maybe boxed adventures in the future, because I really do think this might be a little tricky to create your own adventures for. Okay, maybe not necessarily tricky, but maybe a lot more work involved, because the way the scenes are set up in this introductory adventure, and there's various different events that could trigger depending on what somebody might do or not do. And then, of course, we do have the various different quips that the NPCs are going to toss out there depending on what the situation is. That could turn out to be a lot of extra work in order to capture that feel, to make it really feel like it's a comic book that you're playing in, not just your standard role-playing game that, and everybody's got superpowers. Myself, personally, I definitely think that this is a really nicely done superhero role-playing game. Like I said, it's not going to be everybody's bag of tricks, but I certainly do like it. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give the Invincible superhero role-playing starter set from Free League Publishing and Skybound Entertainment an 8.5 out of 10. All right, that is it for this time out. If you enjoyed the Gaming Gang and would like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as Drive-Thru RPG. And to do so, simply click on one of our banner ads over at thegaminggang.com. And then if you happen to make a purchase, I get a 5% commission on most sales. Now, those commissions really do add up, help keep thegaminggang.com around. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal and become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find all that information down in the show notes. Also in those show notes, you're going to find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free to sign up, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are never going to see here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. If you like the video, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ring that bell. If you ring the bell, select all notifications, because you'll not only be informed when I share videos such as this review, you'll also be notified when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. So I bring you the latest in tabletop role-playing game news and more. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.